All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining today. I am really excited to be with you to talk kind of personal finance during this session. I'll just make a few quick introductory comments, and then we can, kind of get started with the actual content. But I guess first of all, just by kind of way of introduction, my name is Luis Silva-Behrens. I've conducted this workshop now for kind of a handful of years. Always fun and a good kind of conversation. I live in San Francisco right now. I've worked in financial services my entire career. I spent about 11 years working in banking at JP Morgan. And then I now work for an investment management company here in San Francisco. And I guess before that, I went to undergrad at the University of Washington in Seattle, and lived in Seattle for a few years. Before that, I'm originally from Venezuela. I was born and raised there. Moved to the United States when I was around 11. Yeah, that's a little bit about me. I'm certainly not a, I don't know everything about personal finance. This is not meant to be in kind of, a session where we try to cover, every single little thing, because frankly, we could spend kind of days and weeks going through all these topics. I think, what kind of my goal is, and what I hope we kind of get out of today is to really hit some big topics, and then really get our mindset to start thinking about personal finance more broadly. And we're going to talk about some of the kind of main pitfalls to avoid, and we'll hit some big picture stuff. But I think, if you kind of walk away from today, maybe having a little bit of a better sense for, okay, what are the things to watch out for? What are the things I should be thinking about? Or, how do I, why does it matter to have a good kind of financial life and financial history? I think that would be, that would be a success, I think. And so, to that end, it's not, I have some slides here, which I'll kind of, page through, and we can talk about some of these topics. But, I would encourage, everybody to chime in with questions either in the chat, or if you're comfortable, just kind of unmuting yourself and interrupting me. Mid-sentence, doesn't matter, just feel free to kind of chime in. It'll be, it's great to have it be more kind of conversational, and we don't have to kind of get through all this content, right? We can, kind of talk about, what you all want to talk about, and what's kind of top of mind for you. But I think, to kind of lay out the big areas that I wanted to talk about today, this is basically it. We're talking credit cards, budgeting, and investing. And I guess why, maybe a couple comments as to why kind of, why these topics make sense, or why start here. For one, I think the credit card topic, I think, is probably the most important in terms of personal finance, because I think this is one of the easier ways to kind of make some personal finance like mistakes, and kind of get into trouble. And so I think it's good to sort of tackle that, define what are credit cards, kind of how are they different from a debit card, and sort of, talk about some of those pitfalls. And then budgeting really kind of goes hand in hand with credit cards, in the sense that, they're kind of, we're going to hit some, that's, when we think about budgeting and sort of managing your income and your expenses, that's really the key to, balancing, keeping those two things balanced is really the key to hopefully avoiding then needing to resort to things like, credit cards or other types of debt that, it's not to say don't take on debt, but it's, do it kind of in a responsible way. And I think having a budgeting mindset, thinking about your budget all the time, I think that helps avoid a lot of the problems. And then investing is this huge, big topic that, again, it's kind of, we can talk about for days, but I think, my goal here is just to maybe bring up just some very simple introductions to, kind of what is investing, what kind of account do you need to invest, if you want to start investing in like the most kind of simple sort of, introductory type investments, the low fee kind of, accessible type stuff. I'll give you, maybe an example or two of how, how to kind of get started. But anyway, that's what I have in mind. I'll keep looking at the time, and we'll kind of, if we need to skip some stuff, we can do so to kind of stay within our allotted time here. But with that, maybe we can get started on credit cards, and maybe what I'll do first is just kind of define what are credit cards, how it's different than your regular bank card. And to that end, the way to think about credit card expenses is that anytime that you kind of swipe your credit card to pay for something, really think about that as you're taking a small loan from your credit card provider, whoever that might be, right? Whether it's a big bank like a Chase or Bank of America, or a credit card company like Discovery, Capital One, American Express, those types of companies. And the reason why that is because if you let's say you go to Starbucks, you buy a latte, and you pay with your debit card, that money that let's say the $4 that you spend at Starbucks, like that's going to be immediately deducted from your bank account the second that you spend it. And so you're going to know by looking at your bank account, that's your money, right? You're going to know, like, every time you spend something, okay, it comes out of your bank account, right? It's like your money, you're using it to buy stuff. Credit cards are not linked to your bank account. Credit cards are their own thing. So to get a credit card, you have to go to, a bank. It could be the same bank that you have your bank account with, but it doesn't necessarily need to be. And you apply to get a credit card. So the bank's going to ask for information, personal information, like they would if you're opening a bank account. So, your name, address, like your, all of that kind of basic information. And then once you get approved for a credit card and you have a credit card, that is its own thing. It is not linked to your bank account. It is, totally separate. And what happens is when you use your credit card, to go back to a Starbucks example, if you use your credit card to buy that cup of coffee, that money is not coming out of your bank account right away, right? That money is just, the credit card company, they're going to keep track of all the stuff that you charge on it, right? So, okay, you got a latte today, you got a latte tomorrow, you bought some, you went to a movie, you bought some lunch, you bought, you paid for gas, whatever it might be. And they'll tally up all your expenses on your credit card. And then the point is, at the end of the month, they're going to send you a statement, and they're going to say, hey, Carla, you charged $400 on your credit card this month, so this is what you owe. You kind of, in a way, what you did is you borrowed the money from them because it didn't come out of your bank account right away. You kind of borrowed it on a short-term basis, and then at the end of the month, the intention is to pay it back, right? And then the money comes out of your bank account, right? Once you make that payment at the end of the month, that's when it comes out. So the kind of the easy way to kind of think about, okay, how does this situation potentially, put us in a problematic situation is that, well, if I'm spending on my debit card and it's coming out of my bank account, I know, like, if I'm running out of money, I'm going to know because it's instantly coming out of my bank account, right? If there's no money in my bank account, I'm gonna be able to see it. It's coming out right away. The challenge with doing it on your credit card is because it's not happening simultaneously, you have a situation where, you kind of have to keep track of all the money that you're charging on your credit card. And it's hard to then compare, okay, like how much have I charged on my credit card versus how much do I have in my actual bank account? Can I actually afford to pay it back at the end of the month? And if you don't sort of track that well, if you kind of lose track of all the expenses or you get carried away and you buy too many things, then what happens is you kind of start overspending. And the credit card company will let you do that, right? And then what happens is at the end of the month, when you can't pay it back on time, then you run into problems. Now you're getting late fees and you start to get charged interest. And so I'm seeing, so there's a question here in the chat from Rose. So you build credit by paying those payments charged to your credit card on time. That's right. That's exactly right. And we're going to talk a little bit more about kind of credit history, credit reports. And so what Rose kind of means here when you kind of read build credit, that notion of build credit, which a lot of people, kind of see it in the, sometimes TV, you kind of, or you hear, friends, family talk about, I want to build my credit. What that means is that every time that you get any type of loan, you're gonna, your life as a borrower is going to be maintained over time. Like any loan that you get is going to be tracked over time. And not only is the amount of the loan going to be tracked, but also your ability to pay it back or your history of paying it back, right? And so by building your credit, what it means is that you're taking on debt and you're also then paying it back, right? That's the way to build credit history, right? And we're going to talk a little bit more about kind of credit reports and credit scores later on, which are kind of like the metrics to measure your credit history. When is the best time to open a credit card? What if you don't have a job yet? Great question. So your first credit card is kind of the hardest one to open because it's one of these like chicken and egg things where, credit card companies are more willing to give you a credit card if you have credit history already. But to build a credit history, you need a credit card, right? And so the first credit card tends to be, a little bit, sometimes can be hard to get because of that reason, because you're not going to have credit history, and you're trying to, it's your first one, right? And so Christopher, I'll tell you what I did. I ended up, and I think, this is one thing that I would recommend. I ended up just talking to my bank, which at the time was Bank of America. Actually, your follow-up question is exactly right. Secured bank account. So what I ended up doing is I went to Bank of America and I sort of explained the situation. I want to open a credit card, et cetera. I don't have credit. It was before I even had started my first job. And what I ended up doing is I opened a credit card that was linked to my bank account, that was kind of secured by my bank account that I had with Bank of America. So what it means is that it's still like you're borrowing money, right? Because it's not coming, when you're charged something on your credit card, it's not coming out of your bank account. But that bank, because they have your bank account as well, it's secured by it, which means that if something were to go wrong, you borrow too much on your credit card and and then you can't pay it back, they can then go into your debit card, your debit account, your true bank account, and you can use that money to pay for the credit card, right? And so in a way, it's less risky for the bank, right? Because okay, they're still giving you a credit card, but they know that at the end of the day, it's secured by what the money that's in your bank account. So they feel a little bit more comfortable giving you that credit card, especially for the first time. And that can be a way, that's the way that I kind of, once I had that for, 6 months to a year, call it of, okay, I'm charging, I'm paying it on time, I'm charging, I'm paying it on time. You start to build that credit history, then it becomes easier to then open a regular, credit card in the future, right? So we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. What is the difference between statement balance and current balance? That is interesting. I think it's, so my guess is that, so most of the time that would probably be, if you're looking at it like on the exact date of the, like, let's say it's the exact end of the month and you get the statement and like on that day, then your statement balance should be close to your current balance because it's kind of reflecting, it's reflecting what you've borrowed up until that day. The reason why you might get a difference from time to time is, let's say that, okay, so the end of the month, it's July 21st today, right? So the end of the month is next week. Let's say your credit card company sends you a credit card statement on August 5th. It's possible that by the time they send you the August 5th statement, if it's a July month-end statement, your statement balance is going to say, okay, hey, this is what you charged in July, right? And let's say that's $500. But let's say in those first couple of days of August, you kind of bought some things, you just used your credit card a few times. It's possible that then by August 5th, even though your statement balance, what you're due from that July is $500, it's possible your current balance might be more like, $600 or $700 if you've already spent more. Hopefully that makes sense. It would be a timing thing where you haven't paid your July, due yet, your amount that's due yet, and you've kind of continued to use it along the way. So that could be the difference there. Another way to build my credit without having credit card. That is interesting because if you can't have a credit card, I presume that means that would mean that you can't have any debt of any sort. So I would say this, if you can't have any debt of any type, then that would be hard to do. Then I think I'm not sure what the answer to that question would be. And I don't know how people, kind of work through that constraint because you kind of need a debt. You don't need a credit card necessarily, but
I can also add to that one, Luis. There's also ways to build credit, like through electricity bill, any kind of utility bill, that also in some shape or form builds credit. It's not as the same rate as a credit card would. So there have been students who have built their credit to start off with like their utility bills when you're living like off campus and so on and so forth, to build their credit, but it's not as quickly as building your credit via a credit card throughout the year.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I also, I'm just thinking out loud here, if you have a secured credit card, I don't know how specific, I'm sure it's up to interpretation, like what's credit, what's not, but if it's secured by your bank account, is that really a credit card? That builds credit history, but you're not technically, it's a credit card, but it's secured by your bank account. So anyway, I'm not entirely sure kind of how to get around that, but I can kind of think about that some more and follow up on a one-off basis. Do you have to be 18 plus? I'm gonna say I'm fairly, actually I hesitate on that. I was gonna say my gut tells me you do, but I'm not entirely sure. That actually might be a bank by bank, card by card. Like, so I'm thinking, if you have a co-signer, like let's say one of your parents or something, or a family member is willing to co-sign for you, then you probably can get around that, is my guess. But then there could be also banks that just straight up say, hey, it's only for 18 and over. But there's probably ways to get around it if you're not 18 yet. Why, pros and cons, right? So like why? So I guess like some people might ask, like, why even bother? Like why, if I'm going to pay it back at the end of the month, like why bother with this credit card stuff? And the answer to that is that, there's a few reasons. One, convenience, right? In the sense that you know, let's say that the timing of when you're getting your, yeah, let's say that what you do to generate income, whether it's you're receiving tuition payments, or I mean, you're receiving scholarship payments, you're receiving whether it's a job, right? Whether it's a gig job or whether it's a, you know, kind of like salary job, etc. Your income might be coming in at various weird times, right? Every couple of weeks, maybe you get paid once a month, maybe you get paid on like weird, you know, timelines, etc. So sometimes, so if you're, you know, let's say you don't get paid until the end of the month, but you have expenses, right, throughout the month, well, then if you use your debit card, you're kind of running into a mismatch timing, right? Where, okay, well, I don't get paid till the end of the month, but I want to pay this bill now, or I want to use, you know, I kind of need to fund this expense. And so your credit card kind of helps you conveniently, you know, sort of fix that timing issue, right? Because you can just pay with your credit card, knowing that, oh, okay, well, I'm going to get this income at the end of the month. So like, I'm going to have the money at the end of the month when it's due. So, you know, even though you don't have it in your bank account right that second, you're going to have it eventually. So that's one thing. Building credit history. So we talked about this. It's the easiest way to basically start building this history of, I'm taking a loan, I'm paying it back. I'm taking a loan, I'm paying it back, right? That's the way to build positive credit history. You can earn rewards. So a lot of the credit card companies will kind of offer you like branded credit cards that give you points of various types. So for example, you could have like a, you know, Marriott branded credit card, that what it does is every dollar that you spend on that credit card, you're going to get a point or some number of points that then you can accumulate, and over time take those points and redeem them for hotel stays, right? So I have a, you know, one of the credit cards that I have is like a hotel, you know, the Marriott credit card that's offered through American Express. What I do is I use it, I accumulate points, and then, for example, like in September, I'm going to, you know, let's say if I go visit family somewhere and I need a place to stay, and, you know, the house is packed, et cetera, and I need a hotel, I can just easily, you know, kind of pay with my reward points and use them then, right? And so that's another benefit. There's also like theft protection. Like sometimes if you make a purchase with your credit card, and let's say something goes wrong, like the retailer you know, doesn't give you the product that you bought, or something, you know, somebody like, you know, something goes wrong, and like your product, whatever you bought gets stolen or whatever happens. Oftentimes, if you call your credit card company, if you use your credit card to buy that item, they will sometimes help you resolve that. And oftentimes they'll just refund you, and then they'll kind of deal with the consequences. So that, you know, they'll deal with the retailer, et cetera. Cons, which I think are the most important here to cover, are interest costs. So what that means is if you don't pay back, so if whatever you charge on your credit card, as long as you pay it back by the end of the month, you're good. You don't get any fees. It's fine. You just, you know, whatever you charge is whatever you pay back. If you don't pay it back, then what happens is the credit card company starts keeping track of all of the money that you don't pay back, and they start charging you interest. Because at that point, they're saying, oh, okay, this was supposed to be a short-term loan. Now you're taking a short-term loan and you're not paying it back at the end of the month. So I'm going to start now charging you an interest rate. And won't come as a surprise that credit card companies don't have great interest rates. Usually their interest rates are pretty high. So once you start paying interest, then that's how those credit card companies kind of start, you know, making money off of your usage, basically, right? So that's why it's important to pay it back at the end of the month. Ease of overspending, like we talked about, you know, you kind of lose track of everything that you're spending. You charge too much because it's hard to kind of keep things together. Like, okay, how much money do I have coming in? How much money have I spent? Because it's credit card, you know, it'll let you keep swiping, right? Potential for fraud, fees. Some credit cards have fees attached to them. Many of them are free. Some of them have fees. Okay, let's keep going. We're going to keep going through the presentation to kind of get through some more material, and then we'll try to go back to kind of answer some questions maybe as we go on. Maybe this example will be a good one to illustrate here. So credit card companies are very savvy with marketing, right? They have huge marketing departments. They hire a lot of marketing people. They're very good at like trying to sell you credit cards. Maybe not yet, right? Because you haven't landed on all their kind of junk mail distributions, but believe me, you will eventually. And then you're going to get kind of bombarded with these types of ads. And I think my message to you when it comes to credit card ads is buyer beware, right? Is always think critically about what the offer is, read the fine print, and kind of be aware of exactly what you're kind of signing up for. And so I think this example illustrates that pretty well. This is an example of something that this is just a random, Lowe's, credit card offer. But, what this credit card here is offering is what they call 6 months of special financing. What that means is that in this case, what that means is they're charging you 0% interest rate for 6 months. So in my previous example, I had mentioned that if you don't pay back at the end of the month, you start to get charged interest rate or an interest rate on whatever balance you have left, right? In this case, Lowe's is saying in this Advantage card, they're saying, hey, for 6 months, you don't need to pay it back, and I'm not going to charge you any interest, right? So it's as if instead of paying back at the end of the month, you can pay me back in 6 months, and there will be no interest charged. You'll just pay me what you charge. So you go buy a refrigerator or something, and then you have 6 months to pay it back and 0% interest rate. It can be a great deal, right? If you don't have the money to pay it right away, it's a good opportunity. Maybe you need that refrigerator. This could be a good way to kind of get 0% financing. The challenge is, and the kind of key part of my message here is that, and I just took this is just the fine print from this offer, right? Which, you don't need to bother kind of reading the whole thing, but the message, the kind of fine print basically explains that if you pay within 6 months, you're not going to get charged any interest. But if you start to go, if in 6 months time, you don't pay back that purchase in full, then what happens is that credit card company they're not only going to charge you interest from that point forward, they're actually going to go back to like the initial date when you purchased it, right? So back 6 months ago, and they're going to charge you interest like retroactively as if you've had that balance like since then, and then they're going to charge you interest for 6 months. So, which obviously is going to result in a huge interest payment. So my point to you being, be very careful with these types of offers, read the fine print, and, kind of know that, a lot of these things, kind of are either maybe not too good to be true, but they're good if you use them responsibly. They can also, kind of be misused, right? And then, kind of to illustrate what that means in terms of like dollars out of your pocket, if you end up kind of falling into this trap, or a similar trap, which is what I call here the minimum payment trap. Let's say you buy a TV. In this case, you buy a Samsung TV for $1,100, and you charge it using your credit card, right? The credit card company, like I said, they're gonna, if you pay back at the end of the month, there's no interest. That's it. It's just, you charge $1,100, you pay back $1,100, no problem. Now, the credit card company, they're not going to force you to pay back at the end of the month, right? They're going to say, hey, if you want to leave a balance, that's fine. You can go ahead and leave a balance. They're going to give you a minimum payment, which in this case is the higher of 25 bucks or 5% of your balance, right? And what happens, and that's the minimum payment that you have to make. So you have to make a payment. You can't just like at the end of the month pay zero, right? They're going to say, hey, we want to see some progress. We want to see you make a payment, right? But in this case, compared to $1,100, your minimum payment is going to be much lower, right? And so what happens? What happens is people, and I've had, family members kind of fall into this trap where, okay, I'm buying the $1,100 TV, and if I'm understanding this credit card, thing correctly, I only have to pay a pretty small amount every month, and I still get my $1,100 TV that I really can't afford to pay today, and that I probably shouldn't have bought in the first place. So what happens is you end up falling into this trap where you think, okay, well, as long as I pay the minimum payment, I'm fine, which is, kind of true, kind of not. You're fine in the sense that if you pay the minimum payment, you eventually will pay it off, right? As long as you pay, as long as you don't charge more, right? If it's just 1,100, if you pay the minimum payment, eventually you will pay it off. But in this example, you can see that it almost takes 4 years. If you just pay the minimum payment, it's going to take you almost 4 years to pay back the full $1,100, right? And over the 4 years, what's the credit card company doing? The credit card company is just, charging you, interest, right? Every single month, right? They're just charging you interest. Over the 4 years, in this example, you're basically paying, instead of $1,100, which was the cost of the TV, you're paying, $1,456. So that extra $356 is just pure interest, right? That's just revenue. That's revenue for the credit card company, right? So my message to you is, don't buy something on your credit card that you're not planning to pay back at the end of the month, right? Don't fall into this notion of, hey, as long as I make the minimum payment, I'm fine. Because then what happens is you end up paying a lot of interest, and it takes a long time to actually pay back the purchase in full, right? This, kind of can breeze through because a lot of these things we kind of talked about. Make sure you understand the terms, beware of the offers, pay on time, pay in full, all this kind of stuff. So we can kind of skip into credit reports, credit scores really quick. So we talked a little bit about this with the earlier question that was posed about building credit, right? And so what does this mean? So there's these 3 companies, and they're listed here on the left. And don't ask me how this industry developed this way, but this is kind of how, I don't know how exactly it came to be, but this is how it is now, where you have 3 companies. There's more, but there's 3 really kind of the more commonly used ones: Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. What those companies do is they maintain your credit history, right? 2 ways. One way is they have what's called a credit report for all of us. It's linked to all of us via our identifying information, right? Because it's all linked to the system, right? Any credit card that you have, any car loan that you have, any mortgage that you have, everything, it's all linked to you personally. These companies have a report that tracks all of your debt, right? All of your outstanding debt. They track, how long you've had, how much you've borrowed, how long you've borrowed it for, how much how good you've been at paying on time. Your entire credit history is listed in your credit report, right? That's one thing. The other thing that they do is they provide what is called a credit score. So a credit score is essentially, it's kind of a metric. It's kind of a grade. You can think of it as a personal grade of how good you are as a borrower. So based on the stuff that's in your credit report, so I have this credit card, I have this car loan, I have this other loan, I've had X amount of credit cards over the years. This is how many late payments I've had. This is how much I've paid on time, etc. All that information gets compiled into a model, and that model takes your information and it spits out a score, right? I think 850 is kind of the, the kind of perfect score, but it can be, in the 800, 700, 600, based on the combination of your individual credit history, you get a credit score, right? And that credit score, is then used by, credit card companies, by lending companies, by banks to then decide, whether to give you loans. If they're going to give you a loan, so not just like, hey, should I give this person a loan, which is one thing, but then also if they're going to give you a loan, what interest rate are they going to charge you on that loan, right? And the general rule of thumb is, as you can probably imagine, the higher your credit score is, the more easily you qualify for a loan, the lower the interest rate is going to be on that loan. And then there's like random things that come up that don't even have to do with a loan, where having a good credit history helps, like applying for an apartment. If you're gonna submit a rental application, not everybody does this, right? It depends. If you're renting it from like an individual on Craigslist or something like that, it's possible that the individual person might just choose not to kind of check your credit. But what will happen is, if you rent from one of the big, rental companies, let's say it's a big rental building somewhere, et cetera, a lot of them will want to check your credit report before they decide whether to lend, or not, in this case, not lending to you, but in this case, it's whether to actually let you rent an apartment in their building. So they're using your credit score in a way to kind of determine whether to even, kind of grant your application to live in that building, right? So again, these are ways in which having a high credit score can actually impact you in ways that maybe are not so obvious, right? Like getting a loan. The way to build, kind of a higher credit score, I'm going to skip through this. And by the way, the slides are going to be shared with you after this. And so, anything I skip, if you want to reference it back, it'll kind of be there for you. But a lot of the way that you build your credit history, it's the same way that kind of you build it's the way that you manage your credit card, right? A lot of the same principles apply, right? Use debt responsibly, don't over borrow, pay on time, like all those things. Now, these are websites, and again, this is on the slide. There's ways, there's a federal law that mandates that you can get access to your credit report once per year, right? And so, and I put the website here, and it's once per year, and I think it's once per year from each of the reporting agencies, right? So what you do is you go to this, if you're curious, right? If you're just like, hey, let me just check this out. I mean, if you have no credit history, there should be nothing there. But let's say if you have a credit history and you want to see what it actually looks like, you can go to this website, and once per year, you can access your credit report from each one of those reporting agencies for free, right? There's going to be companies that are going to offer you the ability to access your credit report. They might charge you a fee. Don't do that. Kind of be careful of when you're getting these offers. A lot of, as you can imagine, there's no shortage of scams in the world that we live in, and a lot of easy scams have to do with, kind of accessing your credit information, things like that. But this website, it's the official website. And you can kind of access it there. And then there's these companies that also can provide you your credit score. Your credit card companies, a lot of them will provide it to you for free. Like I know Chase provides credit score for free if you're a Chase client. And in fact, you might not even need to be a client. Anyway, I just provided you some resources here if you want to actually see what yours looks like. Does your credit score actually go down every time it is reviewed? I'm just looking at a question here. Does checking your credit score hurt your credit score, and does it go up and down every time it is reviewed and checked? Okay, great question. So every time, so when you look at your credits, like when you log on and you access your credit report, nothing happens, right? That's just, you're just accessing. If somebody just wants to review your credit file, usually there's no impact to your actual credit, your credit score. Now, what happens is that, let's say that I want to let's say that I want to get a new car and I want to get a car loan, right? And the car loan company says, I'm at like a, call it a Honda dealership or something. And the Honda dealership says, okay, well, in order for me to give you this loan, like I'm gonna need to run a credit check, as if you're kind of applying for the loan, right? That when you get that inquiry, like when there's a merchant or a loan provider that is running an official credit check, like I said, to give you a loan, to kind of approve you for a loan, when they do that official check, that is a negative on your credit score. That makes your credit score go down, right? It's not a huge deal. Obviously, if you're going to apply for a loan, then there's no other way to avoid it. They're going to need to run your credit. So it's not a huge mover. It's not gonna hurt your credit score, and you can like easily make up for it for whatever it did go down by. You can easily make up for it in short time. Now, what the rating agencies are trying to avoid, or what they're really kind of trying to discourage you from doing, is from getting a lot of loans very quickly, right? So let's say that, okay, I'm gonna get this car loan, and then tomorrow I'm gonna get a loan, I'm gonna get a personal loan, and then next week I'm gonna apply for, a loan to, to buy a condo, and then I want a loan to buy, another car. Now you're applying for a lot of credit at the same time, and all these people they're running your reports, they're running your credit checks every single time to approve you for these loans. That is going to hurt your credit, right? And so so that's what you want to avoid. One-off, totally fine, but kind of on a continuous basis, you want to kind of be careful. So this I didn't really talk about last year, but I felt that it should be mentioned because it's kind of becoming this phenomenon now with buy now, pay later. And just very quickly, my message, and I'm sure you're all very familiar with buy now, pay later. And I think now when you make online purchases, you often see these options to, like, okay, if it's $100 of purchases, you can now do this buy now, pay later, apply through one of these buy now, pay later companies, and then you can kind of break that $100 bill or $100 charge into, like, call it 4 different charges over time. That's all good and great. I think a lot of them will charge you 0% interest rate if you just pay, if you pay on time. That's all good and great, but in the similar vein to credit cards, you kind of have to remember that, just because you're breaking down these payments over time doesn't mean that the payments aren't going to go away. It doesn't mean that the payments aren't due, right? And so all of a sudden, if you start falling behind on your payments, the same problem is going to happen to you as with the credit cards, where you're going to get charged late fees. You're going to get, they're going to charge you interest potentially. So these are some statistics that were kind of gathered from a Lending Tree survey that was done kind of earlier this year. So my guess is it's probably higher now, if anything. And I think some of this I find like pretty alarming, like the fact that almost half the people that have used buy now, pay later have made late payments. Like, that to me is a cause for concern. The fact that almost 3/4 of the people that use buy now, pay later say that they kind of overspend compared to if they just have to make purchases up front. So word of warning, use this very carefully. A lot of these companies, they're new. This is like an untested phenomenon. Don't fall for the trap of having too much, charging too much in these buy now, pay later companies, and then getting stuck with a lot of payments. Okay, in the best interest of time, I'm gonna breeze through budgeting because I want to talk briefly about it. So my messaging with budgeting here, first of all, my screenshots are from Mint. It's one budgeting app. If you go back, 15 years ago, there were very few, if any, budgeting apps. Now there's hundreds. There's tons of them. They're super easy to use. This one's super easy. Mint, one of the more popular ones. You can kind of enter your estimated paychecks, and you can enter your estimated expenses, and then kind of track, how you do relative to what you kind of estimated that you would spend or that you would receive in income. This is what like my overarching message here on budgeting is the following. It's tedious to sit down and spend an hour like adding up all your income and adding up all of your expenses and kind of putting it down on this app or putting it down in a notebook. But it's really important that you do so. It's really important that you do it, or that you kind of spend the time to do it up front. The reason is that our financial lives are like, they are going to get pretty complicated over time. If yours isn't complicated now, which it probably is already to some extent, once you think about college, well, actually, think about college versus high school. Right now, you have it's like tuition payments and book payments, and it's like scholarships, and then jobs, and transportation. Like that's only going to get more complicated over time, right? Then you have housing payments. When you have families over time, if you have loans, if you have a mortgage to pay. So it's really important that you get into the habit of budgeting now, right? When your life, from a financial standpoint, might be relatively, kind of simple, because you want to get into that habit, right? Of knowing exactly what your income is and then exactly what your expenses are. And some of your expenses, you don't know exactly what they're going to be, right? It's an estimate, right? But it's important to have an estimate so that that those two things are kind of roughly in balance, right? You kind of want to know that, okay, my income roughly equals my expenses. Those things are balanced, so I'm in good shape. Ideally, of course, you want more income than expenses, such that you can take that money and you can put it into your savings account. You can, potentially, invest it. You can kind of leave it in a rainy day fund in case there's an unexpected expense, which, obviously, they happen from time to time. So that's my message to you: is get into the habit of doing it now, such that when, it's more important later on, you kind of have this foundation, and it becomes just a normal part of your financial life, right? And then again, some examples here for budgeting apps. Now, investing. Okay. Now, this is something that probably a lot of you, maybe some of you have some experience in. I presume most of you probably don't, which is, to be expected. It's something that probably doesn't become really more impactful until, kind of later on, maybe post-college, kind of start your first job, maybe you start to develop a little bit of savings. Sort of what I kind of want to leave you with in investing is to kind of start thinking about investing as a way for you to plan for your financial, future, right? Whether it's your future children's college education, your future, down payment for a mortgage, your retirement money, et cetera, right? And again, it's not something that you necessarily need to do now, but eventually, you kind of want to get in the habit of doing this. So you're going to have the ability to do so via retirement accounts once you kind of start. What maybe some of you already have. If your employer kind of offers it to you, but you probably, a lot of you will. If you don't have it now, you will in a few years. And so I just want to provide you a very quick introduction to kind of, why is investing important? Kind of what are the easy ways to do it, et cetera. The first thing to note is that for you to invest, say you want to invest in stocks, right? The first thing you need to do, or the first thing you kind of need to have, is you need to have a brokerage account. Weird name, but all that really, it's as if think of your brokerage account as like another bank account. You're going to apply for it the same way that you would a bank account, right? You're going to provide a lot of that same information. You're going to provide some sort of deposit, cash. And the reason it's different is because, in your regular bank account, you just have your checking account, your savings account. In your brokerage account will allow you to transact in investment products, right? So if you want to buy stocks, you deposit $100 into your brokerage account. Say you want to buy, $25 of XYZ stock. You can do it through the brokerage account. So when you do that, it will reduce your cash by $25. It will purchase the stock, and then in your balance on the account, you'll just see, okay, I have $25 in this stock, and I have $75 in cash, right? It's very simple. Nowadays, the brokerage companies, which I've listed some here in no particular order. These are, I think, if you rank by the largest number of users, these are kind of the 4 popular ones, but there's tons of other ones. They're all very easy to use, very easy to open accounts. Nowadays, with kind of recent technological advances, a lot of these things are a lot easier and a lot cheaper to do than they were before. And I think, maybe with the last few minutes here, what I'll I'll skip some of this US stock stuff, and I will kind of show you this example and talk about compound interest as a way for you to kind of visualize why investing early kind of matters. And this idea of compound interest, it's a little bit of like an intimidating term, but the idea of compound interest is that, let's say that I invest $100 today, right? And I get 10% on my $100, right? What that means is that by next year, I'm going to have, instead of $100, I'm going to have $110, right? 10% of 100 is 10. Now my total is $110, right? Let's say that next year, I get another 10%, right? Well, instead of 10% of $100, right? It's actually going to be 10% of $110, because you have to remember that you already made 10, right? My first year I started with 100, then I made 10%, then I have 110, then the next year I'm making 10% of 110, right? Of the bigger number. And if you follow that over time, the beauty of compound interest is it compounds quickly, so that if you're generating these types of returns over time, you're generating returns on top of returns, right? And what this example shows here on the graph is that, the kind of like when you start to invest can almost be more important than kind of what you like. Sometimes if you start investing early, right, it can give you a higher benefit than if you invest less money, but if you start later in your life, right? And so in this example, this kind of illustrates that, the first investor started at 25, and they set aside, just $5,000 a year for 10 years in a row, right? So that's 10 years of savings, and then they stopped, right? And the second investor, they, instead of starting at 25, they didn't invest anything until 35, but then at 35, they started investing the same amount, the 5,000, for every year for 30 years in a row, right? Instead of the first investor, it was just 10 years, and then they stopped, right? And you can see that because of compound interest, because that person, the investor number one, had 10 years ahead, they had a 10-year head start on their investing, they actually end up being better. By age 65, that person ends up being better off than the investor that started later, right? And again, it's easy to get caught up in the kind of math of it, and it gets wonky, but the message is, if you start kind of gradually over time, you can get a lot of benefit rather than kind of postponing it until the future, because you want to start earning that interest, that return as early as possible, and then build on it over your financial lives. So I spoke a lot, and I apologize for all the babbling. Hopefully that wasn't too sleep-inducing. But I'll probably leave it here. Carla, I'm not sure. I think timing is tight, but we might have like a couple of minutes. I don't know if do we have time to open it up maybe a little bit, or should we call it a day?
It's really up to you. I've launched the poll. Students, if you have not been able to answer the poll, please do so now. We answered a lot of questions in the chat. If you feel to drop them in, and Luis, it's up to your time if you would like to answer any.
Yeah, I can stay a few minutes.
Students, if you have any questions for Luis, feel free to unmute yourself now. But if you don't have time, students, you are free to also log off. But any questions for Luis?
Yeah, and my contact info thing is going to be shared with folks after anyway. And so if somebody wants to follow up with me on the side, if I didn't get to talk about something that you kind of were hoping to discuss, just send me an email, and I'm happy to kind of talk to you about it on a one-off basis. So I see a question here from Hillary. When you get a credit card and you don't use it for a month or more, is there a fee? There isn't, Hillary. So I guess let me take a step back. So some credit card accounts, they will have a fee no matter what. So for example, like I was talking about my, the Marriott card that I have, that card has a fee attached to it. Frankly, I can't remember what it is. I think it's like $100 a year or something like that. That's its own thing. That's a fee that is charged to the card, no matter, if I don't use it, if I use it, doesn't matter, right? That's its own thing. So some credit cards just have fees attached to them. Usually the reason why they have that is because they're giving you some benefit in exchange for the fee. In this case, Marriott is saying, hey, if you pay X amount per year to have this card, then the reward is going to be that you're going to get a lot of hotel points. And so those hotel points are going to be enough to offset that fee, right? So anyway, so some credit cards have fees, but I think the fee you're referring to is more like whether there's any interest cost or like non-usage fee and things like that. And if it's a free credit card, which your bank account will give you a regular free credit card, then there's no fee. There's really no fee ever, unless you kind of you incur the fee. So you don't pay them back in time, or you have late fees, or you start to get interest payments, things like that. But if you just use it a couple months and then you just kind of don't use it for a few months, it's fine. There's no balance. You might get a statement maybe that still says just like zero balance or whatever, but there won't be any fee associated with it per se.
I have a question.
Yeah. All right.
So I know about the funding, but do you know when I will see my 10,000 degrees advisor?
Yes, I can go ahead and answer that question. Your scholarships, I mean, this goes for everybody. Your scholarships are actively being processed by our scholarship department throughout these next couple of weeks. For those of you who are still pending to receive your acceptance email, anticipate to get those throughout these next couple of weeks, throughout August as well. When it comes to your advisors, either we are actively awarding and your advisor will reach out at that point to introduce themselves, or they are just starting. We just hired a couple of dozens of new fellows, and so know that they're being onboarded, and so they'll be reaching out in the next couple of days to start working with you one-on-one and scheduling time to interact with you all throughout fall term. So anticipate an update throughout the next couple of days.
Oh, so I just have to wait, right?
Yes. You'll get an email from your advisor.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Other questions for Luis or for us as staff?
Bye.
All right. Well, Carla, hearing none, maybe we call it a workshop 2022.
Woo! Thank you so much, Luis, for sharing your knowledge with all of us. Students, feel free to log off for the day. Community members, feel free to log off for the day. We are good to go.